The rift in relations between Canada and the United States is being further exposed at the World Economic Forum in Davos.
Canada gets a lot of freebies from us, by the way. They should be grateful also, but they're not. I watch your
When we're Canadian, inclusive, fair, ambitious.
Prime Minister yesterday. He wasn't so great.
I remember this speech in Davos, right?
Yeah.
In the Davos World Economic Forum in Switzerland. And there was this speech, and then that speech was made by the Canadian Prime Minister, and then Donald Trump. He absolutely tore into Donald Trump. So he's here, he's not very happy here.
Yeah, I remember it.
Yeah.
You told me about it.
Yeah, so we're going to watch the speech. But first of all, let's go.
Grateful. But they should be grateful to us. Canada lives because of the United States.
What?
Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements.
But Canada doesn't live because of the United States.
Yes, sir.
Canada thrives because we are Canadian.
Welcome back to another reaction video. Ladies and gentlemen, we are reacting to how Canada secretly holds America's economic survival hostage,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
Canada, the US depend a lot on Canada for some economic, a lot of part of their economy, right?
Yeah.
A significant portion of American economy depends on Canada. And let's not pretend as if Canada completely depends on the United States. Of course, Canada needs things from the United States that they depend on, but
Absolutely.
so both of them need each other.
Yes.
So the US need Canada, not all the nonchalant attitude of not needing Canada by the US president, which is crazy. And you know what? Let's go listen to the Mark Carney speech that I told you about first. Then we come and finish this video.
All right.
Yeah.
Canada was ready to celebrate a huge moment, and everything
Hold
seemed
on.
set to begin.
It's not this video. It's not this one. Yeah, this is the speech here.
We're reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading, that the strong can do what they can and the weak must suffer what they must. And this aphorism of Thucydides is presented as inevitable, as the natural logic of international relations reasserting itself. And faced with this logic, there is a strong tendency for countries to go along to get along, to accommodate, to avoid trouble, to hope that compliance will buy safety. Well, it won't. So what are our...
Yeah, that what he's saying is spilling fact. Like, for you to survive as a friend of Donald Trump and you're not authoritarian, is that accept everything he's saying.
Yes. Just follow him.
Just
Anything
follow
that he
him.
says,
Yes.
let it just be a yes for you.
Constantly praise him, and even at that, you are not still guaranteed. Because I think when he started with all this tariff stuff, people were like calling and begging him and trying to find ways around it. But he kept digging down, right? Yeah. You see countries like China and Russia, they don't even beg Donald Trump for him to be so accommodating about it. I'm not calling Donald Trump a dictator, but he likes dictators. That's a fact.
our options. In 1978, the Czech dissident Václav Havel, later president, wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless. And in it, he asked a simple question: how did the communist system sustain itself? And his answer began with a greengrocer. Every morning, this shopkeeper places a sign in his window: Workers of the world unite. He doesn't believe it. No one does. But he places the sign anyway to avoid trouble, to signal compliance, to get along. And because every shopkeeper on every street does the same, the system persists. Not through violence alone, but through the participation of ordinary people in rituals they privately know to be false. Havel called this living within a lie. The system's power comes not from its truth, but from everyone's willingness to perform as if it were true. And its fragility comes from the same source. When even one person stops performing, When the greengrocer removes his sign, the illusion begins to crack. Friends, it is time for companies and countries to take their signs down. For decades.
Yes, sir.
For decades, countries like
Hold on.
Canada-
We don't even know which part of the political spectrum Mark Carney is in Canada. I don't know which political party is in Canada. I am not endorsing his politics. But you see this? Yeah, we are here for it. I have done videos about the United States, and I've stated clearly how much I love the United States.
So much.
I still do love the United States as a country. I will fight on the streets for the United States. But what the US president has done is absolutely disgusting.
A lot.
He's managed successfully to make all the friends of the United States hate the United States.
So badly.
Yes.
That even Canadians no longer feel like they
Go-
can be friends with the
The United States, which is
again.
crazy.
Like really crazy.
Most people should just think of Canada and the United States as like a single country,
Yes.
like mentally. But for him to just think, because of that, let me take advantage and begin to think of taking Canada as part of the United States.
Hi.
Canada is bigger than the United States by
How
size.
do you even think of that? Like,
Yeah,
really?
it's crazy.
You want to make Canada as one of your state?
Disrespecting the Canadian Prime Minister like that is not cool. Threatening to take part of Denmark and just talking down on other world leaders is not something I really support. I will never do that. If people watching here are US citizens, I would always say it, I love the US, but what the US president is doing, I support some of the things he does. I'm not going to list them, but you see what he's doing, I am totally not for it. Yeah, let's watch this. I'm going to link the speech in the description, so we're not going to watch the whole thing, but I think this was a total destruction of Donald Trump here, and Donald Trump was not having
that prospered under what we called the rules-based international order. We joined its institutions, we praised its principles, we benefited from its predictability. And because of that, we could pursue values-based foreign policies under its protection. We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful, and American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals, and we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination. The multilateral institutions on which the middle powers have relied, the WTO, the UN, the COP, the architecture, the very architecture of collective problem solving in finance and supply chains. And this impulse is understandable. A country that can't feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself has few options. When the rules no longer protect you, you must protect yourself. But let's be clear-eyed about where this leads. A world of fortresses will be poorer, more fragile, and less sustainable. And there's another truth. If great powers abandon even the pretense of rules and values for the unhindered pursuit of their power and interests, the gains from transactionalism will become harder to replicate.
Can you hear that? Can you hear that? I'm telling you that this speech took Donald Trump unaware.
He wasn't expecting it.
And many world leaders were surprised. And it kind of set the tone for this World Economics Forum. And I loved it. I don't like a powerful country just bullying people. I don't think the United States is known for that, right?
Yeah, I don't actually think so.
But I think Donald Trump feels like he can use the strength of the US to bully other countries, which is not something I really like. So, with that, let's go back to how Canada secretly holds the US economic survival hostage. Yeah.
All right.
Let me have a...
The rift in relations.
Hold on. Let's see. I think this is the place. Let's go. Our train is passing, y'all. We have a train passing in the neighborhood. Yeah, let's go.
We are Canadian.
Yes.
Canada simply will not survive. That was the brutal ultimatum Donald Trump delivered to Mark Carney at Davos. The message was clear. America has the size, the money, and the power. If a trade war starts, Canada collapses. But that assumption is a trap. While the world focuses on America's GDP being 10 times larger, they are missing the terrifying reality hidden in the pipelines and power grids. The truth? The United States is woven so tightly into Canadian supply lines that unraveling them wouldn't just hurt Canada, it would trigger cascading failures across the entire American economy. So, is the US superpower actually a hostage to its quiet neighbor? Trump thinks Canada is fighting for survival, but by the end of this video, you'll see why a war with the North might actually be America's biggest self-inflicted wound. To understand why the US loses this war, you have to look at a map of the American Midwest. This is PADD2. It is the industrial engine of the United States. It's where the steel is made, where the cars are built, and where the agriculture is processed. It is also a geopolitical hostage. Most Americans assume that because the US is the world's largest oil producer, it's energy independent. But here is the part most analyses ignore. Oil isn't just oil, it's chemistry. There is light sweet crude, which comes from Texas shale, and heavy sour crude, which comes from the Canadian oil sands. The refineries in the American Midwest were built decades ago, specifically designed to process heavy Canadian crude. They literally cannot run efficiently on the light oil produced in Texas. They are chemically addicted to Canadian imports. Currently, the Midwest relies on Canada for nearly 70% of its heavy crude supply. Some refineries rely on it for 100%. Now sit with that for a second. If a trade war stops that flow, you can't just truck in oil from Texas. The chemistry doesn't match the hardware. Refineries would have to shut down or undergo billions of dollars in retrofits that would take years. Overnight, gasoline production in the Midwest collapses. Diesel, the fuel that moves every semi-truck in America, vanishes. Analysts at GasBuddy estimate that prices in states like Michigan and Ohio wouldn't just rise. They would spike by 40 to 70 cents per gallon within days. But it's not just about paying more at the pump. Without diesel, the trucks stop. And when the trucks stop, the grocery shelves in Chicago go empty. But let's assume the US figures out the oil problem. They run into a second, much harder wall: logistics.
It's always been crazy to think that Canada supply oil to the United States because by far the US is the highest producer of oil.
Yes.
Like by far. I think Canada is number 4 or something like that. I don't know whether it's number 4 or 5. Oil producer.
But then they supply oil to the US.
They supply a lot to the US.
And that's something that you can never really know if you don't actually
like do these videos.
Yes,
yeah,
do
or
these videos that we do
read
here.
follow news or read books. You never know. Yeah, it is wild.
Who would have imagined?
Yeah, it's just not just because you produce crude oil that you process crude oil. Yeah, it's not just because you export crude oil that you have enough in your own country. So you need to like buy from other people while you sell your own to other countries. Because the industries in the USA, they were built to process crude that mostly come from Canada and the Middle East. So the US crude is now processed out of the US. It's complicated. It's simply not simple.
Most Americans think of Canadian National or Canadian Pacific as foreign companies that just deliver maple syrup across the border. That is a dangerous underestimation. These aren't just Canadian railways. They are the spine of the American transport system. Through a series of aggressive acquisitions, these two Canadian giants now own massive stretches of track inside the United States. CPKC, Canadian Pacific Kansas City, is the only railway that connects Canada, the US, and Mexico in a single line. This is where the power dynamic flips. We aren't talking about Canadian goods entering the US. We are talking about American goods moving between American cities on tracks owned by Canadian corporations. If a trade war escalates to sanctions or asset freezes, and Ottawa decides to play hardball with rail logistics, the US supply chain suffers a catastrophic stroke. Grain from Iowa doesn't get to New Orleans. Cars from Detroit don't get to the dealerships. The US supply chain is literally riding on Canadian steel rails. Washington can sanction the company, sure, but they can't unweld the tracks. For weeks, maybe months, internal US commerce would be paralyzed by a foreign entity that operates from the inside out. The next vulnerability is even more primal. It's not about fuel, it's about food. Modern industrial agriculture is basically a method of turning petroleum and minerals into calories. And one of the most critical minerals is potash. Potash is the source of potassium in fertilizer. Without it, corn doesn't grow tall, soy doesn't yield protein, and the soil dies. The United States imports nearly 80% of its potash requirements, and the vast
80%.
Because the US is a huge agricultural producer. 80% of potash imported. Let's see how much percentage is imported from Canada though.
and the vast majority of that comes from one place, Saskatchewan, Canada.
Saskatchewan.
You might think the US can just buy it from somewhere else. That sounds logical. But look at the map. The other major producers are Russia and Belarus. Both are heavily sanctioned. Both are unreliable. There is no plan B. If a trade war places a 25% tariff on Canadian fertilizer, or worse, if Canada restricts exports in retaliation, the cost of farming in America skyrockets. Farmers operate on razor-thin margins. They can't absorb a 30% hike in fertilizer costs. They pass it on. By the time that corn reaches the supermarket in the form of beef, cereal, or syrup, American families are facing double-digit food inflation. Washington might be willing to fight a trade war, but are they willing to fight a hunger panic in an election year? Canada holds the keys to the American dinner table, but the terrifying part for the Pentagon isn't food or gas. It's the materials that keep the American superpower functioning. Let's talk about uranium. The United States operates 93 nuclear reactors. They provide
Uranium. Canada produce uranium? Well, let's find out. Hold on. I love this one.
Seriously?
It's the materials that keep the American superpower functioning. Let's talk about uranium.
Okay.
The United States operates 93 nuclear reactors. They provide 20% of the nation's electricity and roughly half of its carbon-free power. But here is the statistic that keeps national security advisors awake at night. The U.S. mines almost zero uranium, specifically about 5% of what it needs. The rest is imported, and the largest, most secure source of that uranium is Canada. If that supply chain breaks, the U.S. nuclear fleet has a finite lifespan before the lights go out. Then there is aluminum. Canada is the largest supplier of aluminum to the United States. This isn't just for soda cans. It's for the aerospace industry. It's for the Ford F-150. It's for the armor plating on military vehicles. During the last minor trade dispute in 2018, the U.S. government realized that without Canadian aluminum, American manufacturing costs would bloat to the point of uncompetitiveness. Canada is the mine. America is the factory. You can close the factory and survive. You cannot close the mine and build anything. Now, let's look at the industry that defines the American middle class, the automobile. The North American auto industry is not a series of...
Did you ever think that Canada produced aluminum in the first place?
No.
But then they are the ones supplying most of the aluminum to the US.
Yeah,
as
the most of
compared
the
to-
imported
Yeah, they
aluminum.
import, yes, as compared to other countries. Wow. I mean, I'm impressed. I had no idea about this. I
Jesus
didn't even know
Christ.
Canada produced uranium. And what?
A lot of it. And potash.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the meters. There are two of them.
they spoke about aluminum, right? And
Yes.
spoke about potash and uranium. And what again?
Then the four.
Yeah, the fuel,
The
right?
oil, yes.
The crude oil. Let's listen to how it affects the auto industry in the US.
American middle class, the automobile. The North American auto industry is not a series of separate national industries. It is a single, fused organism. A typical car part, a steering column, or a transmission gear does not just cross the border once. It crosses the border up to 7 times before the car is finished. Iron Mind in
Why?
Minnesota.
How can it cross the border 7 times before the car is finished? Like, how does that happen? I don't even like to think about what 7 times means for a part to cross the border before a car it is put in, before the complete car comes across.
It's just a type.
I don't know how that works.
Times before the car is finished. Iron Mind in Minnesota, turned to steel in Ontario, stamped in Michigan, assembled in Ohio, back and forth, 7 times. If you impose a tariff on Canadian goods, you aren't taxing the car once. You are taxing it every single time that part crosses the line. The compounding cost is mathematical suicide. Industry estimates suggest a full-blown trade war would add thousands of dollars to the price of every vehicle sold in the U.S. Sales would plummet. Factories in Detroit and Tennessee would idle. Hundreds of thousands of American auto workers would lose their jobs, not because Canada is stealing them, but because the politicians broke the assembly line. This brings us back to the original illusion, the idea that size equals leverage. In a trade war, the United States looks at its bank account and sees a winner, but Canada looks at the map and sees the truth. Sit with this reality for a moment. The US can certainly hurt Canada. It can crash the Canadian dollar, bankrupt Canadian businesses, and cause a recession in Toronto. That is undeniable, but in doing so, the US would burn down its own house. It would cut off the fuel for its own refineries. It would starve its own farmers of fertilizer. It would paralyze its own rail network. It would inflate the cost of its own food and transport. Washington can survive a trade war with China because the Pacific Ocean is a buffer. It can survive a trade war with Europe, but it cannot survive a war with its own anatomy. The geography of North America was not designed for borders. It was designed for flow. Rivers flow south. Valleys run north-south. The continent is a single unit. When politicians draw lines on a map and threaten to close them, they are fighting against the physical reality of the continent. And in a fight between politics and geography, geography always wins. So the next time you hear a politician threaten to close the northern border or punish Canada with tariffs, ask yourself one question. Are they threatening Canada or are they threatening US?
I think that's a brilliant question over there.
That narrator is cool. I just think. Oh, this is wild, right? Whoever thought that you will be making these kind of videos?
Definitely. I wouldn't have even.
If the US, if Donald Trump didn't come along to be doing all these kind of things.
Yeah, that's the thing too.
The arrogance is crazy. I just thinking, well, I can do anything to my people, to my friends, and get away with it because, oh, yeah, they depend on us. Is absolutely not.
Right.
It's not. Then cannot just get off something. You have friends, and you think you can do anything.
To your friends, people that have been there for you.
Yes. Imagine he just gets up and say, NATO allies did not help the USA in their foreign wars because they were never in the front line and things like that. Where all of these countries lost servicemen in the front lines, and he just casually dismisses it. Imagine somebody from Canada, from Denmark, from the United Kingdom, from France, whose husband, whose father, whose mother, whose uncle, whose son passed away in Iraq. And you casually just say, nah, y'all did not do anything. It's crazy.
That's really the height of it.
It really makes people hate the United States. Right. And I don't like
I just hope they understand that it's not actually the people, but the president.
Yeah.
I know a few will.
Of course, there will be people in the USA that are always clapping for Donald Trump and say, yeah go right on. And just because he says something about Canada, they begin to not like Canada and things like that. The arrogance is there. Americans love their country. They are proud people. I don't have a problem with that. If you love your country, you can boast about your country all you want. It doesn't mean you have to downplay or push another country down in order to stand up. It was not very necessary. Canada, we love you.
So much.
Always, Canada, we know y'all are calm, you're polite, but you don't accept when somebody tries to work on you. We love that for you. Stay that way. Be happy, be polite, and
Always.
be assertive. Respect Canada.